calling it 4 o'clock. We're going to get started. Thank you very much for joining our session. I think one of the most difficult things to do is to determine how to select a CALI lesson for your course. We have over 950 lessons right now. We're continuing to grow the library. In some areas, such as property and contracts and torts, we have over 75 lessons in each area alone. And I think that a student should even attempt that many lessons is doing a disservice to your course and your students. So trying to figure out which is the best one is the goal of this panel, and I've asked 3 of our authors to come and talk about that. But the rule was they could not tell you how they select their own lesson because it's pretty obvious they pick their own lesson. So they're going to talk about how they select the lessons of others. And we've got 3 panelists representing sort of 3 different areas of the law world. Sandy Placzek is going to speak first, and she represents the world of legal research and the law librarian world. Jim Smith is a faculty member who teaches property and real estate courses. And then finally, Mary Hatfield-Lowe is going to speak. And Mary is the director of a legal studies paralegal program, and will address how she changes lessons more than anyone I've ever met in my life. So let me introduce Sandy first. She is the Associate Director and Professor of Law Library at the Schmidt Law Library, University of Nebraska College of Law. She's both a CALI author and a co-author with her colleagues on Nebraska State Legal Research Lessons. In addition to writing CALI lessons, Sandy is a member of the CALI editorial board, which is our peer review board that monitors all the lessons and ensures that they're accurate. Sandy, thank you.
Thanks for that introduction, Deb. As I go through my presentation, feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have questions or if you need clarification on something I say. And having said that, let's go ahead and get started. So the title of this presentation is Selecting and Using CALI Lessons in Your Courses. And most of mine and the other panelists' remarks are going to focus on how to do that. But before we talk about how to choose and use lessons, I'd like to take a few minutes and ask you to think about this. Who in your organization knows about CALI? And how do you make those people who don't know about CALI know about CALI? The underlying assumption of today's panel is that CALI is a known resource in your community, and that may be a little presumptuous on our part. Just because we're aware of CALI and all of the different things you can do with CALI doesn't mean everybody else in your community is. They can't take advantage of all of that great stuff if they don't know about CALI. So even before we talk about how to select and use CALI lessons, let's talk about a couple of things that you can use to introduce or reintroduce CALI to your community. At Nebraska, we've taken a 2-pronged approach where CALI is concerned. We focus both on the faculty and on the students. Depending on the size and culture of your institution, some of our methods may work and some may not. So even if they don't work, I'm hoping that some of what I say you can take back to your institution and use that to kickstart other ways to advertise CALI in your environment. So how do we introduce CALI to our faculty? We first take the initiative with new faculty members. Within the first month of their arrival, the library hosts an informal law library coffee. And over cookies and coffee, we introduce ourselves, we tell them what we do, we talk about what we can do for them, and we highlight some of the resources available for their use. One of those resources that we talk about is CALI. In addition to explaining what CALI can do, I give them CALI's authorization code, and I give them CALI's URL, and I tell them how to sign up and get a CALI password and how to look at the different CALI lessons that are currently available. I encourage them to contact me after they're a little bit more settled so I can revisit some of the information on that sheet, including CALI. And at that time, at that follow-up meeting, we talk more about how they can use CALI in the classroom. And I also tell them different CALI members or different other faculty members who use CALI in our institution. And that last piece of information, those people that use CALI, I think is really helpful. It gives them somebody they can talk to about how to integrate CALI into their curriculum. So what do we do about current faculty members? How do we reintroduce them to CALI? Our efforts in this area continue to be a work in progress. In the past, brown bags have been offered by both faculty members using CALI and the law librarians. That's one way we try to keep our faculty members aware of CALI. When I'm asked to create bibliographies for classes, I suggest relevant CALI lessons to individual faculty members as we work on resources for their class. That's another way we keep CALI in the conversation. And while both avenues have met with limited success, we continue to think of ways to inform faculty members about CALI. My latest endeavor is the creation of an e-wellness checkup. The impetus behind this checkup is the desire to meet one-on-one with each of our faculty members and discuss the electronic resources we have. The goal is to make sure those resources are being used to their best potential with each faculty member's research and class. That's the next method we hope to use to keep CALI in the minds of our faculty. So what about our students? How do we introduce our students to CALI? We get them early, during first year orientation. Last year we had 30 minutes to meet them. We handed out a copy of this sheet with sign-up information stapled to it. All of our students were required to create usernames and passwords to all of the services on this sheet before classes began. On average, we've gotten about a 95% completion rate using this method, especially when we tell them that they'll need to use all of these resources within the first month of class. Another way I introduce our students, or maybe reintroduce our students to CALI, is when I'm working at the reference desk. Sometimes some of the reference questions I get are perfect opportunities to encourage students to use a CALI lesson. One that jumps to mind in the beginning is when they're doing a legislative history, particularly on the federal level. There's a great federal legislative history, how to compile federal legislative history assignment. I can talk to them about how to do it, but if they don't get all the information they need from me, I direct them to the CALI exercise because it gives them an opportunity to work through the process on their own, and the CALI exercise helps them answer questions that they may have as they're going through the process. It also gives them an opportunity to go back to the lesson, because sometimes they get embarrassed to talk to us, and review things that they've missed at other times as well. The other thing that we do that helps introduce our students to CALI exercises is something that we call in the library world serendipity, right? The opportunity to browse through and find things that you think are relevant. So we put CALI on our webpage as one of the quick links to encourage people to use it. And so if you see right here, this is a screenshot of our homepage, and one of the quick links is CALI. So if I say to them, there's a CALI lesson that may be relevant to you, just go to our homepage. There's a link right there to direct them to CALI. The other place we have CALI on our webpage is under our research tools. So if they don't even think about CALI initially, they glance over the quick links, they think that's not relevant, they can click on the research tools, see what other resources we have, and CALI is listed there as well. So it's kind of a two-prong, hit you twice, with the opportunity to use CALI and to advertise CALI. Those are two of the ways those are some of the ways, that we introduce both our faculty and our students to CALI. So how do I select CALI for my class? And how do I use CALI in the classroom? I teach the legal research component of our first year legal research and writing class. And what that means is during the month of October, their second month of law school, I get to use their time, 4 hours a week, 4 class meetings, to teach them legal research. And because I only meet with them 4 weeks, their second month of law school, most anything that I introduce them to at this point is probably going to go over their head. Okay? Because our time is so compressed, one of the things my co-instructor and I have done is we've tried to take different approaches to help them learn legal research, or at least understand some of the tools that they'll be using. And we found that CALI lessons are one great way to do that. We try to move away from the textbook PowerPoint lecture model and include things like electronic exercises and electronic lessons to help them understand the concepts that we're going to be teaching. So how do I select the lessons? As we prepare for class in the summer, we review the topics and resources we want to cover, and we identify the CALI lessons we think will complement what we're teaching. We take each lesson to make sure we're both comfortable with the way the topic or resources is presented. Once we both agree on the lessons, we each then work to integrate them into our syllabi and decide how to use those lessons within the context of class. And the screen up here shows you the different places that you can go to on the CALI website to access different types of CALI lessons. Last year, for example, my students were assigned using restatements of the law, rulemaking, Federal Register and CFR, and how to find case law using digests. Each lesson was selected to give the students more time to focus on those areas because we found these 3 topics traditionally more difficult for students. Again, only 1 month into law school. They have a hard time wrapping their brains around some of those concepts. So, how do I use and integrate those lessons? I flipped my class, requiring students to complete lessons before working with a partner on an in-class assignment. I've assigned them a move requiring books or articles to be read before coming to class to prepare them for that day's discussion. I've used them for the basis of in-class activities. How have we done that? Well, 1 year, they were assigned to look at a couple of different CALI lessons that dealt with secondary sources. And during that class period, the class was broken up into groups. I created 10 questions with 4 answers. Each group was supposed to look at all 10 of those questions, look at the 4 answers, talk among themselves based on the information they'd heard from last week's lecture and the CALI exercises, and determine which of those answers was the most appropriate answer to the question that I've asked. And then we had a class discussion to see how many people got the correct answer, and if they didn't get the correct answer, why they chose the answers they selected. Again, without having them do a CALI exercise ahead of time, this discussion would have been totally irrelevant, or the outcome would have been totally different. And finally, I used CALI lessons as a quiz of sort. Because you can use the lesson link and create a link where you can see what questions your students have answered correctly or incorrectly, I've assigned CALI lessons using the lesson link. I've gone over and looked over their answers and identified questions that they had trouble with so that I can go back later and talk in class about why they may be missing the issue in that, or what problems they have with that exercise, or what problems they have with that particular resource. Creating a lesson link is easy. When you log into CALI, lesson link is at the top, and it will walk you through the process of how to create a lesson link so that you can email that URL to your students and monitor how they take the exercise, what questions they miss, and what kind of scores that they get as well. Those are just a few of the ways that I use CALI exercises in the classroom. Does anybody have any questions about that part? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. One thing I want to add that you reminded me of is you mentioned, Sandy, that you send faculty members, when you sit down with them for cookies and coffee, you remind them of who else at the university teaches and uses CALI lessons. And a resource beyond your own faculty is me. As Director of Curriculum Development, all the lessons pass through my hands multiple times. That's both a positive and a nightmare for me, but I'll work those issues through on my own. And so I often know who has written a lesson and what the underlying reasons for them writing it are. So if people have questions about particular lessons, they can always come to me and I can connect them with the author of the lesson or suggest someone in the teaching area who is willing to mentor them to talk about property lessons, sales lessons, legal research lessons, whatever. So our second speaker is Jim Smith. Jim joined the University of Georgia Law faculty in 1984 and was named the holder of the John Byrd Martin Chair of Law during 1997. Jim specializes in property, real estate transactions, and commercial law and has authored several case books. Jim was a CALI Property Law Fellow in, I think it was 2000, 2001. It's as close as I could.
I don't think that's right.
Is that right? Good. He authored 10 CALI lessons during the fellowship. Let me take a side note here and explain what a fellowship is. Faculty members apply to be a CALI Fellow for a year originally when Jim applied. Now it's a 6-month time. So basically CALI brings together 5 strangers that spend 6 months now working closely together, having meetings, talking about writing lessons, and together the fellowship writes between 25 and 50 lessons over the course of their fellowship term. It's a great way for us to quickly get lessons in a subject area, make sure that the lessons don't all cover the exact same thing. There's a limit on how many lessons we need on landlord-tenant rules and rules against perpetuities. And it's a great way for faculty to work with other people on a positive committee aspect. Because I view all of my authors as their view toward CALI and not their own personal accomplishments, which are grand at their universities, let me tell you that in addition to writing CALI lessons, Jim is also a member of CALI's board of directors and a member of the CALI board, CALI editorial board. So Jim, if you would. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deb. As you can see, at least one of my purposes this afternoon is to model CALI apparel, with a shirt and the special speaker hat, which may become too warm for me, but I'll stick it out as I can. I'm also pleased, I believe, at least for the CALI annual meetings I've gone to, this is the first year that I recall getting a long sleeve jersey, so without registration fees going up. Kudos to whoever arranged that, because I have too many regular t-shirts and not enough fees back home. So when I think about how I've adopted CALI lessons over the years, which really started about the time of my fellowship, I've really had two quite separate purposes, which I think seldom, if ever, overlap. The first purpose, and the one that's a bit rarer, is to use CALI lessons both in property and occasionally the other courses that I teach to provide course content. And when I'm doing that, I am supplementing a standard casebook, so that the courses I do this in don't include my writing seminar, but I've done it in property, I've done it in real estate transactions. When I've taught contracts, I've done it occasionally, and I've done it once or twice in commercial law in secure transactions. And when I'm doing that, it's always the case that I'm plugging some kind of hole in what the casebook provides and giving them a CALI lesson that I think well hits what it is I want them to know. One reason, in part, that this works in the two substantive classes in which I prepared casebooks, which you would think I'd have no need to plug gaps there, is that both of my casebooks by design and with my sets of co-authors for them are relatively thin in terms of number of pages, so that my property law casebook published by Aspen is 800 pages, which I think makes it probably by far the least number of pages for a casebook from a major publisher that, in theory, can cover an entire year of first-year property, although a few schools teach for that. And for real estate transactions, my co-author and I in that have only about 650 pages of materials, and that means that for both classes, because it's hard to keep casebooks that thin and cover materials as fully as I want, I've occasionally used CALI lessons, usually once or twice a semester, to plug a gap. When I do it, it's really a proxy or alternative for me preparing a handout, which I distribute by PDF, which occasionally I do if I don't find a CALI lesson that I think hits the same bases I want to hit. And it's an alternative to doing something which I've never done. That is, customize a casebook completely, either using CALI's E-Langdale resources or something else. When I do this, it's never treating an entire subject matter, such as all of the law of adverse possession or anything such as that. It's the point that my chapter or subchapter on that covers some of the things, but not other things that I think for a particular iteration of the class I really want to emphasize. When I do this, the point again is that the assigned casebook readings aren't going to cover the subject at all, or not in the depth that I want to cover, and because of that, I always assign it usually in correlation with casebook pages, and I make it part of the classroom discussion both by requiring students run the lesson before class and bringing into the discussion either by running part of it on the web page or by bringing with me screenshots of things that I want to emphasize and talk to them about that they've done here. The second purpose that I've had in using CALI lessons over the years is to review material essentially as one possible study aid for students. And unlike my first objective in providing content, this is always after the fact, where if I'm going to tell students collectively or individually, I'd like you to look at this to review what you've done, we already will have studied it. When I pick these lessons, I'm not that concerned that the lesson has enough text and content provision, only that it's a good review and supplements and adds to, but doesn't provide the initial basic teaching in this matter. I do this usually simply by posting the links to the CALI lessons on my twin course page and showing the students that both at the beginning of the semester and occasionally later on when we've hit a particular subject matter. Here, unlike in the first type of situation where I require it and use it to provide content, I don't do much filtering in terms of trying to determine how many strengths does a lesson have compared to the way I teach it, where could there be weaknesses. I largely just look at the titles and look at the subject matters and browse it a bit and decide, yeah, this will probably be useful to at least some segment, if not all the students that I have. Occasionally, I will make individualized recommendations to students in conferences in my office where they're struggling with reviewing a particular subject matter, and at other times I make recommendations to the class as a whole. I want to talk just a couple minutes about how do I find the lessons that work. As Deb said earlier, it's a given, I guess, ego or not, that I believe my lessons work, and I'm easily and frequently able to assign them when I want to, without wondering, gee, couldn't someone have done a better job on writing that lesson? Maybe so, but with my name on it, I tend to use it, and not surprisingly, most students decide that if I've authored something, they're going to use some of the time on their hand to take a look at it and see what it's in there. So initially all I do, it's very obvious, is if it's property law, I look at property law. If it's real estate transactions, I'll look that up. Occasionally when I've taught Quentel contracts, you look that up and scan the titles. And as a general matter, I think our authors are pretty good in giving titles or subtitles to the lessons that clue you in. Is this the ballpark that you want to be in? If I'm going to use the lesson for content provision and assign it, I'm always going to get myself quite familiar with the lesson rather than simply add it as a link on my twin page. And that means I'm going to at least look at the lesson in faculty view. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a convenient tool that allows you on a single scrollable HTML screen to go through all of the pages, whether it's a short, long, or medium-length lesson, including all of the answer pages and the feedback. And then I will also run the lesson, and also, just to be sure I like the way it's working, I'll run the lesson by me intentionally inputting what I know to be wrong answers just to see what the author is doing to cause people to recover and to move forward. The last thing I want to talk about a little bit is the CALI lesson review process. And as Deb mentions, I have experience both as an author of CALI property lessons through a fellowship program, and for many years I've also served on the CALI editorial board to review lessons from time to time. And in my opinion, the review process, whether it's as many people serve for the CEB or in the other setting of fellows, really serves two purposes. The most obvious one is one of quality control. and an attempt by CALI, for which I think we're generally pretty successful in making sure the stuff we put out there is going to be quite good and quite useful to most faculty who look at it. But I think a second and less obvious purpose for the editorial board process is essentially marketing. The bigger a CEB board we have for faculty throughout the country, the more likely it is we're going to have faculty who know of the lessons and the virtues of some of them, so that in my case, where I've assigned lessons both for content provision and sometimes for recommendations, I've known about that lesson already because I reviewed it in the CEB process and knew what it is that I thought it did effectively and why I liked it. In other contexts, in my academic career, other organizations, most commercial publishers, use the review process not only for quality control, but for the same purpose of getting the product known before it's been published by faculty, so that if they don't pan it and they say it has virtue or has virtue with these particular revisions, they're likely going to be promoters of it. So I think that's also a positive way that CALI can get CALI lessons into the hands of students.
Thank you, Jim. Are there any questions for Jim? He's very easy to spot in the crowd here wearing his CALI clothes. Okay. The editorial board is comprised of about 60 law professors and law librarians from a variety of law schools around the country. And some lessons go out for single review, some go out for double review. Reviews are anonymous. The only reason for allowing reviews to be anonymous is it's often the case where I have a younger, newer faculty member reviewing someone who has 15, 20, 30 years of teaching experience. So to avoid those awkward elevator situations at double ALS, I do allow reviews to be anonymous. The review panel is extremely committed to their process, and I'll get reviews that it's very clear someone has spent 4 or 5 hours reviewing a lesson that may take a student 45 minutes to run through. And the comments are very detailed. The rule is you can't just say, I can't dance to this, I don't like it, but you have to say, I don't like it because, and here's why I'm confused by it. You can't review the lesson and say, this is how I would do it. You have to say, I see what you did, and what you did doesn't make sense because my students get confused here. So those are just some of the rules that we have.
But I think, Deb, that anonymity doesn't really impair anything we're attempting to accomplish. I think the quality of the review is as strong, and the promotional angle for getting people who might not otherwise read CALI lessons to read them in prototype is there, whether it's anonymous or not.
Oh, absolutely.
Both within CALI and outside of CALI, I, like other anonymous reviewers, occasionally find it appropriate or useful to tell of the subject matter, usually later on, that I looked at the lesson and thought well of it, or a book proposal and the like, and sometimes that happens, so that, and in this setting, I don't think we're barring contact if a person wants to initiate it, and usually that doesn't happen, but occasionally I've done that.
Right, no, you raise a great point, Jim. The reviews are meant to be anonymous, simply for the situation.
Yeah, right.
However, if you run into someone that you reviewed their lesson and really liked it, I think everyone likes a compliment or a little pat on the back.
And sometimes I'll just say, I've looked at your CALI lesson, I think it's very good, and if it's out already, they don't know if I reviewed it or looked at it later.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Right, and the point also that Jim raises about marketing in the editorial board is an interesting point. The lesson, when I send it out for review, it goes out to the entire editorial board, all 60+ people. And in that group, only a few will reply back and say, I'm able to review it because I have content knowledge, or I have interest in this area, and I have the time right now to review it. But everyone gets to see it, which means if you don't teach property law, but you know someone at your school who does, and they're looking for a particular lesson on landlord-tenant, they can say to their colleague, oh, this new lesson is coming out from CALI on landlord-tenant, you might want to look at it.
If we had enough free money, which we probably don't, there would be something to be said for commissioning many more reviews than we actually need for quality control, just so that people see the thing.
Absolutely.
But again, we do pay the reviews.
We do.
Well, not a huge amount of money, as I recall, but we do.
No, I pay you the same as everyone else, Jim.
Yeah.
Right. Right. You're paid the very grand sum of $100 for what turns into 4 or 5 hours of work. I describe it as you're never going to get rich. You will be the first to look at a CALI lesson, first to know whether you want to adopt it, and I call it a nice evening out on the town. And I think that's probably, depending on what town you're in, that could range from an Applebee's to something with linen napkins. The other thing that's exciting is sometimes people will beg to be a second or third reviewer. We do not have a large, I call it my slush fund. We do not have a large slush fund for reviews. Sometimes I'll let someone review as a second. And then if additional people beyond that want to review, I will allow them to review it just to look at it, to be honest, and I will share a secret link with them that allows them to privately review it, but I won't ask them for full comments or anything, because at some level it also is a little overwhelming to the author to hear from everyone in this room, for example, of how much they loved or found confusing a particular page, because I dare say all of us would look at a certain page in a lesson and have a comment that might fall into certain categories, but we could equally have the same number of comments about something as there are people in the room. So we don't want to, I don't want to make an author cry. That's the standard that I use. Open weeping is never fun for anyone. So our final speaker this afternoon is Mary Hatfield Lowe. And Mary is the program coordinator for the Paralegal Studies program at Northwest Arkansas Community College. This is the second ABA-approved paralegal program that Mary has established and directed. She is currently serving as an elected member of the board of directors for the American Association for Paralegal Education. And that's the conference, actually, where a number of years ago I met Mary and we sat down over a CALI lesson, as you're prone to do, and had quite the conversation, and it just grew and grew and grew. We have over 450 members of CALI, and while we have 200 law school members, we have international affiliates, and then also paralegal legal studies programs. We have a lot of material, and it's useful to some extent to paralegal programs, and my conversation with Mary has shown me how valuable the information is and how much we can do to expand the value to her students. Oops, hold on, let me shake my Etch-a-Sketch. Okay, so prior to entering academia, Mary practiced family law for 7 years. She has an education doctorate and has been teaching for 25 years. Her school awarded her a sabbatical for spring 2015 to author CALI lesson designed for legal studies students and to modify existing CALI lessons. We think she's the first in the country to get a sabbatical for the legal studies program world, and it's pretty exciting. And she's written 8 new lessons in spring, covering a variety of topics, which I'm sure she'll go into. So, Mary, are these your slides? You want to pull them up?
Click number 1.
Sure.
Be my clicker.
Oh, I'll be your clicker. I'd love to.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So, first of all, let me ask you, how many of you are familiar with paralegal education or undergraduate legal studies? Okay. Or how about even B-Law? I've taught B-Law for 22 years. Well, it was a fortuitous moment when I first met Austin. I actually walked into the wrong room at the conference, and there were 8 people there. And the other room was full, and he started talking about CALI, because this was 5 years ago. I knew almost nothing about it. The 2 things he said really struck me. One was that CALI owns everything, so there's no copyright concerns if you took something and, cut and pasted and just put stuff together. And the second was they had restructured their financing, or their cost, so it was something that was affordable to my small paralegal program. So I signed up for CALI, I went home, and of course the problem with CALI for undergraduate students is that probably only 10 to 15% are really applicable, okay? The others are much, much too hard.
Mary, can I ask a favor of you?
Sure.
I think the microphone and camera are going to pick you up better if you're over here.
Okay.
Because we are recording and people are watching the streaming.
Okay.
So I'll
Okay.
leap in and be your clicker if you still
Oh,
need
yeah,
to.
yeah, gotta click.
Okay.
I can't do two things at once.
Okay.
Then a couple years later, I just came up with the idea. I called Deb one summer. My husband and I were out of the country, and I Skyped you, and I said, how would you think about having a sabbatical for an undergraduate program, paralegal program, that I would review, I could revise, and I could write CALI lessons? And the first thing Deb said, do you remember?
I think I pretty much said, you want to write CALI lessons? Sure.
Well, you also said, what in the hell are you calling me for? Go enjoy. But at any rate.
Oh, that's right. You were on vacation. That's right.
Paris.
Yeah, you were in Paris.
Yes.
Why are you talking to me from Paris?
So my husband, who was retired, was saying, we've got to figure out a way to get back here. And I said, well, unfortunately, I have a job I've got to go to. So I thought, well, the other great thing about CALI, you can do it from anywhere. I had no desire to write a book. And I thought, this is something that actually can be used. You know, and I look at the millions of hits that students do this, and I think this is such a great interactive way to learn. So I was really pumped up about it. To back up a little bit, those that don't know much about paralegal education, and don't feel badly, I didn't learn anything about it until the day before my interview for the job, was that there are about 270 approved programs in the country that are approved by the American Bar Association. They have pretty rigorous standards with site teams and everything like that. There are probably 500 in the country. And then we actually have a membership, the Association for Paralegal Education. So if you ever meet somebody that's interested in paralegal education, you might direct them to our website, and because it's got information about all the programs in the country. Most programs are two-year programs. They're sort of small operations. There are a few programs, about 15% of the programs are four-year programs. You'll find those in larger cities. And then also sometimes you find programs at law school, certificate programs, where students actually have to have a degree. They come in for an intense 4 months to get the training. Having said that, when I look at my classes, probably 25 to 35% of my students already have a bachelor's degree. Many of them come to the community college because their degrees in English, journalism, political science. They're unsure about going to law school, and I've had probably 400 graduates, I've had maybe 25 going to law school. They're certainly unsure about taking out any more student debt, and they're not quite sure if this is a profession they want, and they realize that this is a valuable profession. This is a way they can work in the law. Fortunately, in my community, it's the home of Walmart Corporation, there are lots of jobs for paralegals. That being said, most operations are one-person shows. That is, you have a director who also teaches. I teach 16 hours with my overload. And they're in charge of anywhere from 10 to 20 adjuncts. This year I had 14. Okay. The adjuncts are generally working attorneys in the community. They're judges, they're prosecutors, public defenders, they try to get people in firms that hire a lot of people, so they'll spread the word about your graduates. And they are very busy, and they come in, and invariably, when someone is a new teacher, they always make the comment, I just didn't realize how little students read. And that may be sort of the new way things are. I know a lot of people binge watch on TV rather than read a book. But a lot of my students, they're working full-time during the day, they've got kids, and they don't have the focus or the time to put into a lot of reading. And I really like CALI lessons because that's a way to, get them into the material. I like the idea of the flipped classroom. My classes are generally anywhere from 2 hours and 45 minutes to 4 hours at night. So you've got to keep away to keep them interested. If you look at the courses, I just put them up there, you can see I pretty much teach the intro course. I'm the only one teaching it the last few years. research towards. It sort of looks like your standard courses that someone would have in a first-year law school. It's a mix of theory and practical application. And as I tell my instructors, try to think of every class as a lab. That is, I know they're here for 3.5 hours, try to get them involved doing things. And that's another thing I liked about CALI lessons, is even though in some lessons they might be too difficult for the individual to do at home, I've actually had faculty and students work the lesson in class. This is part of it. Okay. Yeah. So I came up, the first thing I came up with the idea was, this is why I call it yelping. I had a hard time quite figuring out, once you know something, it's hard to go back to before you knew it, to see exactly how my students feel about the lesson. And this is just a sort of a gut feeling. So when I would assign a lesson, the first time I would actually have them write a review. And they basically just go through and check it. I do the math later. They don't have to put a comment in. They turn it in. It's part of the grade on their lesson link, and I will pick them up. And then I can sort of give a numeric score. If the lesson gets a low score, that does not mean it's not a great lesson. It just means it's probably too difficult for this population. So I looked at the thing length. The ideal time is like 15 to 30 minutes. The concept, obviously we're not going to do rule of perpetuities. The difficulty in vocabulary, amount of reading, questions, examples, explanations, how difficult they are, attractiveness of lesson. I like a lot of pictures. And when I got to writing lessons this last semester, I actually tried to put a picture on every single page. It wasn't quite successful. I wound up having some pictures of my dog, my children as toddlers wandering the street, you know, my nephew climbing a mountain, but I was trying to get something in there to try to continue. Okay. You want to go to the next one?
Yep.
I also wrote sort of some reviews myself, so this is just an example of a review. Sometimes I find an author and just go through and follow that author. So if you read through this, I actually wrote about 60 reviews. So I spent about anywhere from 2 to 3 hours looking through it and writing a review if you want to go on. So at the end of this, I had sort of a summary sheet that I could give my adjuncts, because I knew that they probably were not going to have the time to go through and weight all of this. It helped me also in looking at, you know, which ones do I want to assign my classes. And I really think that sitting down and going through this extensive review process helped me quite a bit when I went back to try to both revise and write lessons. Go to the next one. Now, getting on to revising. When I first started revising, I remember I took 2 of Doug McFarland's lessons, assault and battery. 2 things bothered me. One, I was really wrestling with, you know, how am I going to rewrite his lesson and put his name on it, because I don't know if I would like that. And 2, I felt sort of uncomfortable pretty much picking up his lesson and putting my name on it, and just the whole, by the time I started revising it, I was having to change it so much for my audience that I thought, I'm going to scrap this after about 40 hours struggling with 2 of them. I'm just going to try to write my own lessons. So actually, this winter, luckily, we got snowed in. My kids are grown. One of them is still not out of the house, but they're grown. And I got over my intimidation factor of the software. And believe you me, I still don't know my GPS on my car, so I'm not a techie person. But I made a lot of calls to Deb about how do I do this, how do I do that. Very, very helpful.
You did a great job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you picked up the software. It is easier than a GPS.
Thank you. Maybe that's my next project before the end of my sabbatical.
Tutorial on that too.
Obviously, I could not have done this without a sabbatical, because it really takes the time, it really takes the focus. I've been trying to tell everybody in my organization, here's my sabbatical, take it, run with it. It would be great if we started developing a lot of lessons for undergraduates, because students are wanting more online courses. It's a perfect medium to put things online. It's a great learning tool. And I only scratched the surface with 60 lessons. There's still 905 to go. So there's just a lot to be done with it. So at any rate, are there any questions? Okay.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I will say that Mary's lessons have gone out for review in her community because that's the best community to review fellow legal studies lessons, and she's in the process of revising them based on her peer comments. And we're creating a sub-site off the CALI website so that students who are told to run a landlord-tenant lesson end up with the same, with the law school landlord-tenant lesson versus the one that Mary has written that is accurate, obviously, but doesn't go into the depth that Jim's lesson on the topic went to.
Well, let me give credit to Jim because I actually went through his lessons. You have 3 on landlord-tenant, Jim?
A few more than that.
Yeah, I think it's
5,
10.
like, oh, well, you have 10 lessons on
Or
property.
8 or something.
This is landlord-tenant.
9-ish.
Yeah, 9, okay.
I teach B-law also.
Business law, for those of us who
Sorry,
don't know your
sorry.
acronyms.
An undergraduate course, and oddly enough, they only take maybe 2 legal classes to get a business degree. Not much. So at any rate, it was nice that I could go through Jim's lesson because I wanted one lesson on everything you need to know about renting. And I actually did it sort of from a renter's point of view. I talked about, do you remember your first apartment? I talked about at the end, here's what you need to do when you get into a lease. And I called it Gimme Shelter. But at any rate, they were fun to do. But I couldn't have done them without, you know, the work that Jim did and all the other CALI authors that I could just go through and control, copy, paste, plop it in there, and then just completely change the language and re-paraphrase it. So, I mean, it's as I'm writing an article for my my publication, paralegal publication, and I was calling it the high on creativity, low on research sabbatical. So I don't know if it's quite accepted yet, but it was nice not to be spending nights grueling over a computer doing original research.
Well, and the way I see your lessons actually going beyond the legal study world and the business school world and international students who need an introduction to U.S. Tort law or U.S. remedy law or landlord-tenant law is also for schools, for U.S. law schools that have some sort of summer pre-law program. A lot of schools have a program for sophomore juniors in sophomore juniors in college to see if the student is interested in pursuing a law school education. And they're often looking for content for their programs. And to immerse students in a full-fledged law course is often a little overwhelming when you get past the vocabulary and concepts such as what is domicile, a concept, or residence, concept we talk about it in the A to J world often, some of these forms that you fill out in different courts. So this would be content for those programs. It'd be very good content for students who are in, if your school runs an introduction welcome to law school, sort of come on a Saturday, and we'll give you a mug and some information on what our school is like. A lot of schools who have an undergrad campus will do this often. And you want to give the students some content beyond a professor lecturing them. You can run them through a CALI lesson in class and have them group up in pairs and talk about it. And it's hard for us to imagine what we were like when we were just starting law school. But you take a traditional CALI lesson, it seems a breeze for us now. And it's a real struggle for people who are just entering. So I think Mary's lessons are going to be able to be repurposed, which is pretty exciting also.
And by the way, if you go onto the other parts of your campus, the business division, the undergraduate divisions, you might tell them about CALI, because I'm surprised that even in my association, there's so few people that know about CALI that I think the word is just starting to get out. So it's certainly, in the research sides for the states, it's certainly a great deal, and it's something that has so much potential.
Thank you, Mary. Are there any final questions for our panelists? Yes, Steve in the back.
Deb, actually, something you said triggered something. because now when most people assign lessons, they're doing it through LessonLink, I assume. You have a resource of everybody who's assigning lessons for whatever course. Have you done any aggregate statistics on that or anything? That's one question. The other question kind of related to that, we're talking about how you know whether a CALI lesson worked as an assigned course. If I knew who had already assigned that lesson through LessonLink, I might be able to contact that person and ask them about how well it went.
Those are great questions. Let me repeat them for anyone who's watching streaming. I know there are a lot of people on the East Coast where it's 7 p.m. and they're watching this conference live right now. There's my ego, Jim. So Steve is asking, because most faculty now assign lessons through LessonLink, the advantage being you can track your students' score, things like that, and because that's all going through CALI's website, we clearly know who is creating lesson links. We know what students are running lessons, we know what students are scoring, we know what question, how many students got wrong. So then the leap is sort of between what we know and what are we doing with what we know. So we know an awful lot, and we're just starting to think about how we can use this data, and whether it's as simple as you call me up, Steve, and say, I want to assign a lesson in contract law. It's my first time teaching contract law. Can you tell me what lessons have been assigned? And I look through a list of all the 75 contract lessons and say, wow, Jennifer Martin's Battle of the Forms has been assigned 100 times in the last 2 teaching semesters of contracts. So maybe you want to look at that one in particular, and it might be a way to sort of filter some of the lessons for the subjects that might be more useful. And then if we turn to Jim's rubric of when do we assign it to supplement or replace, or do we assign it for students' general knowledge sort of thing. So that's something we'd like to use. And then also within that, yes, we do know that a particular question everybody gets wrong. And that means 2 things. All students are bad, probably not likely. More likely it means there's a problem with the question. And we continually revise lessons to get rid of places where the question is phrased in a way that makes sense to all of us in the room, but to a student it's not phrased clearly. Or that law-changing aspect, where a Supreme Court case has come down where now you can do a certain thing with an automobile if you're a police officer and you've stopped them and the trunk is or is not open, sort of thing. So I would hope that maybe next time this year, a session at the CALI conference would be, wow, look what we know. That's a session title right there, I think. Any other questions? Well, if you ever have any comments about lessons or any thoughts about them, you can contact me without me turning you into an author. It's sort of the dark side of my job. But I'm happy to connect you with authors, talk to you about lessons, talk to you about how to modify lessons, talk to you about using them in your class. So thank you very much. And we'll call this the end of the day for the conference.